The forest was quiet that morning, just the way he liked it. Dew clung to the leaves, the smell of damp earth rising as the sun broke through thick branches. Birds sang in the distance, and the hermit, a man with a thick beard and worn leather clothing, sat sharpening a simple hunting knife. His cabin was small, patched together with wood and old scrap metal, hidden so deeply in the wilderness that no one had disturbed him for years. This was the life he chose, far from war, far from people, far from pain. But that day, the silence shattered. It began with a strange sound, like thunder but sharper, followed by the ground trembling under his feet. He rose quickly, eyes narrowing as birds scattered from the trees. A streak of light cut through the morning sky, fiery and unnatural, trailing smoke as it fell. The object tore through the canopy and crashed somewhere nearby with a deafening roar, shaking the earth. He stood frozen for a moment, gripping his knife tightly. He had lived long enough to know that nothing good ever came from the sky. Curiosity and old instincts pushed him to move. He strapped on his worn belt, adjusted the satchel slung over his shoulder, and set off through the thick brush. Each step was careful, silent, like the soldier he once was, though he hated to admit it. The forest grew darker as smoke drifted through the air, the scent of burning metal spreading. Soon he reached the clearing where the wreck had fallen. There, among the shattered trees and torn earth, lay a broken craft of strange design. Its surface was sleek yet scarred with fire. Sparks jumped from exposed wires, and the hiss of cooling metal filled the air. He crouched low, studying the wreck, unsure if he should turn back. He had promised himself never to be involved again. But then he saw movement. From the wreckage staggered a figure, tall and glowing against the ruined machine. At first he thought it was a trick of the smoke, but then he saw clearly it was a woman, or something like one. Her skin shimmered pale blue under the sunlight, her hair long and white like silver threads. She wore armor of gold that glowed faintly as though alive. Even wounded, even covered in dust and smoke, she was the most striking being he had ever seen. She collapsed against the side of the wreck, clutching her arm where blood strangely tinted purple slid down. Her golden eyes flicked open, meeting his across the distance. For a moment, neither moved. The hermit's heart pounded, 1,000 instincts warring inside him. He should leave, he told himself. This was not his fight. Yet he could not step away. Something in her gaze held him there, sharp yet pleading. The forest was not safe anymore. Already, the sound of engines hummed faintly from above, distant but drawing nearer. Whoever wanted her dead would soon arrive to finish the job. He clenched his jaw, cursing under his breath. He had built this life to avoid war, to avoid danger, but fate had dragged it to his doorstep. Slowly, he stepped into the clearing, lowering his knife but keeping it ready. The alien princess watched him with unblinking eyes, her breath shallow. "Stay back," she whispered, her voice musical yet heavy with exhaustion, but he did not. He knelt beside her, pulling a strip of cloth from his satchel to press against her wound. She flinched at first, then stilled, her golden eyes searching his face. "Why?" she asked faintly. He did not answer. Perhaps because he didn't know. Perhaps because after so many years of silence, helping another soul, especially one so strange and beautiful, felt like something he had to do. Above them, the hum grew louder. Ships were coming. Enemies. Hunters. The hermit tightened the cloth around her, wound, and looked into the forest path back toward his hidden cabin. His life of solitude was over. Whether he liked it or not, everything had changed the moment she appeared. The hermit half carried, half guided the alien princess through the forest, his arm steady under hers. She was lighter than he expected, but her steps were weak, and every few feet she stumbled. The gold armor that gleamed on her chest and shoulders looked heavy, more ceremonial than practical. Her breath came in sharp gasps, and though she tried to walk with dignity, pain bent her forward. He knew the forest well, every turn and hidden trail. Within minutes, he brought her to his cabin, a small, weathered shelter patched together with metal sheets and rough wood. To him, it was home. To her, it must have looked like a cage. "Sit," he said firmly, pointing to the old cot inside. She obeyed, her golden eyes scanning the room with caution. As though expecting an attack, he lit a lantern, pulled out a small metal tin, and opened it. Inside were crude tools, herbs he gathered from the forest, and a few rags. It was not much, but enough to clean wounds. As he dipped cloth into a bowl of water, she spoke for the first time since leaving the crash. "You should not have brought me here," she whispered. He frowned but didn't stop working. "You'd be dead in that clearing." She flinched as the wet cloth touched her arm. "And now you will die with me. They will come. They never stop until their prey is gone." The hermit said nothing, but his jaw tightened. He pressed the cloth firmly, cleaning away the strange purple blood. Up close, her features were sharper, more alien, but at the same time breathtaking. Her skin shimmered faintly, as if touched by starlight. Her golden eyes never wavered, even through the pain. "Who are they?" he asked finally. Her lips parted as if to answer, then closed again. For a moment, she seemed unsure whether she could trust him. Then she spoke, voice low and edged with bitterness. "The Dominion. They rule through fear. I was supposed to be their symbol of obedience. Instead, I fled. Now I am a target." The hermit wrapped a strip of cloth around her wound and tied it carefully. "So you're running," he said. Her head lifted, her gaze hardening. "No, I am fighting. But I cannot fight alone." Silence filled the cabin. He turned away, busying himself with cleaning his tools, but her words sat heavy in his mind. He had lived alone for years, avoiding war, avoiding people. And yet here was war again, sitting in his home in the form of a wounded princess. "You should leave," he muttered. "My life is not meant for this." "I would if I could," she said quietly. "But my ship is destroyed. My pursuers will be here soon. And you." Her eyes softened, studying him with strange intensity. "You were once a warrior. I can see it in you. The way you move, the way you watch the shadows." His hand froze. He hated that she was right. Once, long ago, he had been a soldier. He had fought battles, seen men die, and survived when many had not. But he had abandoned that life, carving out solitude as his shield. He looked away. "That man is gone." Before she could answer, a sound drifted through the forest's distant engines, sharper now, cutting through the night air. The hermit's head snapped toward the door. They were coming. The princess stiffened, her hand resting on the golden plating over her chest. "They have found me," she whispered. The hermit moved quickly, snuffing the lantern, plunging the cabin into shadow. He grabbed his bow from the wall, strung it with practiced speed, and slung a quiver of arrows over his shoulder. His body moved on instinct, the soldier's reflexes he had tried to bury. "You stay here," he said firmly, his voice low. "Do not make a sound." She reached for his arm as he passed her. Her touch was light but urgent. "If they capture me, they will burn this world to the ground to find me. Do not underestimate them." He met her gaze in the dim light. Her golden eyes seemed to glow, not with fear but with a strange fire. He gave a single nod, then slipped outside into the night. The forest was no longer silent. Shadows moved between the trees, dark figures spreading through the brush with weapons drawn. The hermit melted into the undergrowth, his bow ready, heart steady despite the odds. For years, he had lived as if dead. But now, fate had given him a reason to fight again. The hermit crouched low in the undergrowth, his bow drawn. Through the thick leaves he saw them, 3 figures moving like shadows, their armor dark and jagged, their helmets glowing faintly with red lights. Dominion hunters. They carried long rifles, sleek and deadly. Their movements were precise, trained. These were not ordinary soldiers. The hermit steadied his breathing. He had been out of battle for years, yet the old instincts had not left him. His fingers itched with memory as he nocked an arrow, waited for the closest one to step into range, and loosed. The arrow struck true, hitting the gap in the hunter's armor at the neck. The soldier fell without a sound, collapsing into the ferns. The other two spun, scanning the darkness with their rifles. The hermit melted into the shadows, shifting position silently. Another arrow flew, striking one in the chest where the armor was weak. The last soldier shouted something in a harsh alien tongue, firing blindly into the trees. The hermit slipped behind him, pulled a knife, and ended it quickly. When silence returned, he stood over the fallen soldiers. His chest heaved, not from fear but from something else, an old fire stirring. He had fought again, and part of him hated how natural it felt. Back at the cabin, the princess stirred as he entered, her golden eyes wide. "You fought them," she said softly. "They're dead," he replied, setting his bow aside. "But more will come. This is not over." She studied him, her gaze unreadable. "You say you are no longer a warrior. Yet tonight you moved like one born to battle." He did not answer. Instead, he poured water into a cup and handed it to her. She accepted it, her elegant fingers brushing his rough hands. For a brief moment, their eyes met hers glowing like fire, his hardened by years of solitude. "I never asked for this," he muttered. "Neither did I," she whispered. She drank slowly, then leaned back against the wall. "But fate does not care what we ask for." The hermit sat across from her, the silence between them heavy. Finally, he spoke. "Tell me who you really are." She closed her eyes, as if bracing herself. "I am not just a fugitive. I am Princess Illyra, heir to the throne of my people. The Dominion fears me, because I carry the right to unite the fractured clans. If I live, they lose control. If I die, their rule remains unchallenged." Her words hung in the air. He stared at her, the truth sinking in. She wasn't just a stranger who had stumbled into his forest. She was a key to something much larger, something that reached far beyond his world. "You should have told me sooner," he said. "Would you have helped me if I had?" She asked, her voice sharp but tired. He didn't answer, because she was right. If he had known, he might have turned away. But now it was too late. Her presence had already shattered his solitude. A faint rumble shook the air outside. The princess stiffened, turning her head toward the sound. "They are sending more," she whispered. "Larger ships. Stronger hunters. They will not stop." The hermit rose, moving to the door. The night sky glowed faintly in the distance, the sign of approaching engines. He clenched his fists. He had lived in peace for so long, convincing himself that the world's battles were no longer his. Yet here he was again, standing on the edge of war. "You should rest," he told her. "Tomorrow will not be easy." She watched him, her golden eyes softening. "Why are you doing this?" "You owe me nothing." For a long moment, he stood in silence, his back turned to her. Then, in a low voice he said, "Because I couldn't walk away." "Not this time." Princess Illyra's lips curved into the faintest smile, though it was touched with sadness. "Then perhaps," she whispered, "you were never meant to live alone." The hermit didn't reply. He stepped outside into the cool night air, his gaze fixed on the horizon where the glow of enemy ships was drawing closer. The storm was coming, and whether he wanted it or not, he was no longer just a hermit. He was once again a man at war. The dawn came with no birdsong. The forest seemed to hold its breath, heavy with the scent of smoke drifting from the distance. The hermit stood outside his cabin, bow in hand, eyes scanning the treetops. He could feel them coming before he heard them, the steady hum of engines, the low rumble of machines cutting through the morning mist. Princess Illyra stepped out behind him, her golden armor dimmed with scratches, her wound still wrapped in cloth. She carried herself with quiet pride, though her body trembled with weakness. "They are here," she said softly. The hermit nodded once. "Stay inside. If they find you, it's over." Her golden eyes hardened. "If they find you, it's over too." He didn't argue. He simply pulled the string of his bow, testing its strength, then set an arrow to rest against it. Every nerve in his body was awake. He had lived years in silence, but now his blood raced like it did in the old days. The first shadow moved between the trees, then another and another. More than before. A squad of Dominion hunters spread through the forest, their armor gleaming with sharp lines and cruel symbols. Their visors glowed red, scanning the ground for signs of life. Behind them, the faint thrum of a heavier ship shook the air. The hermit loosed his first arrow. It struck the nearest hunter in the chest, piercing where the armor joint was weakest. The soldier collapsed with a strangled cry. The others instantly turned, weapons raised, firing into the trees. Bright streaks of energy cut through the morning fog. The hermit rolled into cover, his movements fast and sharp. He loosed another arrow, then another, each one striking with precision. 2 more hunters fell, but the rest pushed forward, their formation unbroken. Inside the cabin, Alira gripped the edge of the doorway, watching as the man fought with the skill of a soldier who had never forgotten war. For a moment, she saw not a hermit, but a warrior, a protector, a man who stood alone against the storm. Then the larger shadow descended. The Dominion ship broke through the treetops, shaking the earth as it landed in the clearing near the cabin. Its sides opened, and more hunters poured out, twice as many as before, armed with heavier rifles. The hermit's heart tightened. He could fight, but not against all of them. He fell back toward the cabin, firing as he moved. The hunters advanced, their red lights cutting through the trees. An energy blast struck the wall of the cabin, sending wood and metal splintering. Alira stepped forward, her golden eyes blazing. "You cannot fight them all," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "I can try," he growled. She placed a hand on his arm. For the first time, he felt the strange warmth of her touch, soft but fierce. "You fight for me, but you don't understand. I am not here to survive. I am here to endure, to carry what my people gave me. And I cannot do it without you." He looked at her, torn between rage and fear. "I am no king, no leader. I am just a man who wanted to be left alone. Yet here you are," she whispered. "Alone no more." The hunters closed in, their boots thudding against the earth. The hermit grabbed a torch from the wall, dipped it into oil, and hurled it into a pile of dry wood outside. Flames leapt high, crackling and roaring, casting light across the clearing. The fire forced the hunters to slow, their visors flickering as the heat pressed against their armor. In that moment, the hermit struck. His arrows flew swift and sharp, each one guided by instinct. Alira moved beside him, her armor glowing faintly, her voice rising in a strange chant that sent a shiver down his spine. For a time, the cabin held. The 2 of them stood together, back to back, against the storm. But the enemy numbers did not end. For every hunter that fell, another stepped forward, weapons blazing. The fire spread wild, licking the trees, turning the forest into a cage of smoke and flame. The hermit knew then, they could not hold this place. He turned to her, his face set with grim resolve. "We can't stay. If we do, we both die." She met his gaze, her golden eyes fierce yet trusting. "Then lead me, human." "I will follow." He nodded once. Without another word, he took her hand, pulling her through the smoke as the hunters closed in. The cabin, the home he had built through years of solitude, burned behind them, swallowed by fire. His past life was gone. All that remained now was the fight ahead. The forest burned behind them as the hermit led Alira deeper into the trees. Smoke curled through the branches, and the cries of Dominion hunters echoed faintly in the distance. His cabin, everything he had built to keep the world away, was nothing but ash now. Strangely, he felt no grief for it. Instead, his thoughts burned with something else, the weight of choices he could no longer avoid. Alira stumbled as they climbed a ridge, her wound slowing her. He steadied her quickly, his arm firm around her shoulders. For a brief moment, their eyes met, her golden gaze shining through the smoke. "You could leave me here," she said quietly. "They are after me, not you." The hermit shook his head. "If they find you, they won't stop at you. They'll burn this forest, this world. Walking away isn't an option anymore." She looked at him with something between sorrow and respect. "Then you choose to fight." He didn't answer. But inside, he knew the truth. He had avoided war for so long, burying his weapons, burying himself in silence. Yet war had come anyway. And now, with this princess at his side, he could not turn away. They reached a rocky outcrop, a place he knew well. From here, the land dropped into a ravine, and across it lay caves hidden by vines. Perfect for cover. He guided her down carefully, each step measured, until they reached the shelter of the stone. Inside the cave, the air was cool, damp and silent, muffling the noise of pursuit. The hermit lit a small fire, more for her warmth than his own. Alira sat against the wall, her armor faintly glowing in the firelight. She watched him with those golden eyes that seemed to see past every wall he had built. "You speak like a man who lost much," she said softly. He froze, his hands tightening on the bowstring he was restringing. "I lost everything," he said at last. "Brothers in battle, family, a reason to care. That's why I chose silence." She lowered her gaze. "I too have lost. My father, my people scattered, my throne stolen. Every step I take is weighed with the fear that I may never see them again." The hermit looked at her then, truly looked. Beneath the gold armor, beneath the alien grace, she was just like him, wounded, burdened, searching for something worth holding on to. Before he could speak, a deep rumble shook the cave walls. Outside, the hum of Dominion engines grew louder. He stood quickly, bow ready. "They've brought reinforcements," he said grimly. Alira rose to her feet, though her body trembled. She drew a small blade from her armor, its edge glowing faintly. "They will not stop until I am gone." The hermit grabbed her wrist, his grip firm. "Then we fight. Together." She blinked, surprised by the certainty in his voice. "You could run," she whispered. "You could leave now and vanish into the wild again." His eyes hardened. "I've been running my whole life. It ends here." A silence stretched between them, filled only by the crackle of the small fire. Then slowly she nodded. "Then I will trust you, human. With my life." The engines roared louder, closer now. The hermit moved to the cave entrance, his body tense, every nerve alive. He had no army, no reinforcements, only his bow, his knives, his will. But for the first time in years, he felt a reason to stand. Alira stepped beside him, her blade glowing, her golden eyes fierce despite her wounds. Together, they looked out into the darkness where the hunters approached, their red lights flashing through the trees. The hermit drew an arrow, steadying his breath. "They want a war," he said, voice low. "Then they'll have one." And in that moment, the choice was made. The hermit was no longer a man hiding from the world. He was a warrior again, fighting not for glory, not for survival alone, but for someone who had given him a reason to fight. The sound of boots drew nearer. The storm was about to break. The cave trembled as the Dominion hunters closed in. Their red lights pierced the forest gloom, moving like wolves circling prey. The hermit stood at the entrance, bow drawn, eyes fixed on the shadows. Princess Alira stood beside him, her golden blade faintly glowing, her armor battered but regal. For a brief moment, silence stretched. Then the storm broke. Energy fire lit the night, streaks of red cutting through the trees. The hermit ducked low, loosing arrow after arrow, each one striking with deadly precision. Hunters fell, their bodies crashing against the rocks, but more surged forward. He moved with sharp focus, every muscle alive, every instinct sharpened by years of survival. Alira fought beside him, her blade flashing gold in the firelight. She was wounded, her movements slower, but there was fire in her strikes. Together, they held the mouth of the cave, two figures against an army. The hunters pressed harder. Grenades whistled through the air, exploding against the rocks. Dust and flame roared inside the cave, forcing them back. The hermit shielded Alira, pulling her deeper into the shadows. "We cannot hold this place," she said through clenched teeth. "I know," he answered, his voice rough. "But we can finish it." He scanned the trees and saw the Dominion ship, hovering low in the clearing beyond, its engines glowing, its hold still open as more soldiers poured out. That ship was their anchor. Destroy it, and the hunters would be stranded. The hermit's eyes hardened. He turned to her. "Stay here. Guard the cave." She caught his arm, her golden eyes fierce. "You cannot do this alone." He looked at her, and for the first time in years, a faint smile touched his lips. "I've been alone long enough." "Not anymore." "But this part, it has to be me." Her grip tightened, as though she feared letting him go. Then slowly she released him. "Then fight not as a hermit," she whispered, "but as the warrior you were meant to be." The hermit slipped into the night, moving like a shadow through smoke and flame. The hunters didn't see him until it was too late. Arrows struck fast, knives flashed in the dark, and one by one they fell. He advanced toward the ship, every step pulling him deeper into the storm. Blasts seared the ground around him, burning trees and earth, but he did not falter. At last he reached the ship's hull. With a swift motion, he hurled his last torch, flames licking across leaking fuel lines. The fire spread instantly, racing up the metal. The Dominion soldiers turned, shouting, firing wildly, but it was too late. The ship erupted in a thunderous explosion, fireball lighting the night sky. The blast shook the forest, scattering trees, throwing hunters to the ground. From the cave, Alira watched as the flames roared high, lighting the hermit's silhouette against the fire. For a heartbeat, her breath caught, then she saw him stagger back from the wreck. Alive, bow still in hand, smoke curling around him. The remaining hunters, leaderless and stunned, broke into retreat, vanishing into the dark forest. The Dominion storm had ended here. When he returned to the cave, Alira rose weakly to meet him. Her golden eyes shone with something new, not just relief, but respect, even reverence. "You destroyed them," she whispered. He shook his head. "No, we survived. That's all." She stepped closer, her hand brushing his arm. "No," she said softly. "You chose to fight. You chose not to hide. Without you, I would be dead. Without you, hope would be gone." For a long moment, they stood in silence, the fire outside still burning, the night filled with smoke and ash. At last he looked at her, and the walls he had carried for years seemed to fall. "My life of solitude is over," he said quietly. Her golden eyes softened, a faint smile curving her lips. "It ended the moment I found you." He did not argue. For the first time in years, he felt something he thought was lost, a reason to live beyond survival, beyond silence. Not just as a hermit, not just as a soldier, but as a man who had chosen to stand for more than himself. The fire behind them crackled, marking the death of his old life. Ahead, the forest stretched wide, filled with danger and possibility. Together, they stepped forward. The hermit was no longer alone.